Okay, hello. Here I'm recording the video. I want to go over one of the questions from your homework. This is homework from section 3.1, number 67. You have two functions f with the given equation 4x plus 5, g with the given equation 8x minus 1, and you have multiple parts of that problem. I only show part A when you have to find the sum of two functions and the domain. And I'm assuming the rest will be find the difference, product, and quotient, and the domain. Let me show how to solve that problem. So first of all, you have two functions together. What you want to do when you have problems like that, you want to start with finding domain of both functions. So domain of function f of x. Function f of x, you guys know already that this is the equation of a straight line. So domain of linear function is all real numbers. Because what is the meaning of domain? Domain, you're listing all the x's which we can pick for this equation. So here, like you guys see, we don't have any restrictions because this is linear function. So domain of function f, it's all real numbers. I'm just going to put it from negative infinity to positive infinity. So again, domain describe x's. Domain of g of x, g of x is also a linear function, 8x minus 1. This is equation of a straight line. So domain represents all the x's. So for x, you can plug in any value you wanted, and always you will be able to evaluate y. Which when you have linear function, again, there's no restrictions for x values. That means then domain of this function is also from negative infinity to positive infinity. So part A, they want you to find the sum of those two functions, f plus g of x. Using the definition, okay, that means how you're going to find sum. You're going to add equation of function f to equation of function g. Okay, so sum of those two functions will be equation of function f, which is 4x plus 5, plus equation of function g, which is 8x minus 1. And when you're adding those two functions together, just combine like terms, and that will give you 12x plus 4. Okay, so this is the answer. Okay, so this is the new linear function. This is f plus g of x. Now, when you solve that, then they will ask you what is the domain of sum of those two functions. So you're always checking what is your result. Like you guys see here, this is just linear function also with the slope 12 and the y-intercept 4. So all linear functions have the domain from negative infinity to positive infinity. But on the lecture, I teach you that to find this domain of the sum, you have to find the domain of original function, f, which is from negative infinity to positive infinity, domain of the second function, g of x, which is from negative infinity to positive infinity. So the sum, which is the result of adding those two functions together, has to have the same domain, which is from negative infinity to positive infinity. Now, part B, again, here it doesn't show part B, but I'm assuming that B will be find the difference, C will be find the product, and D will be find the quotient. So I will just finish that problem. Part B, probably they asking you to find the difference of those two functions. So the difference of two functions, you're taking the first function, f of x, and subtract from that function g of x. So function f of x has the equation 4x plus 5 minus, and function g of x, put that function in parentheses, it's 8x minus 1. And now to find the difference, here we'll have to distribute that minus to both. So we have 4x plus 5 minus 8x plus 1. And when you distribute minus, you're going to combine like terms. So we have 4x minus 8x, which is negative 4x. 5 plus 1 will give us 6. So this is the result. This is the f minus g of x. And the same thing, they asking you here to find the domain of f minus g of x. So since the difference, it's also linear function, and we know that domain of function f and domain of function g, it's all real numbers. So here you're also going to have all real numbers, which you can write as an interval from negative infinity to positive infinity. Part C, they will ask you to find the product f times g of x. So to find the product, you multiply function f by function g. And of course, when I'm talking multiply, you're multiplying the equations. So function f has the equation 4x plus 5. Function g has the equation 8x minus 1. And don't forget that here you will need to FOIL. So 4x times 8x plus 4x times negative 1 plus 5 times 8x plus 5 times negative 1. Okay, so when you FOIL, just simplify. So we're getting 32x squared minus 4x plus 40x minus 5. That will give us 32x squared plus 36x minus 5. So this is the product. This is f times g of x. Okay, so this is the solution. So here, also when you will have the solution, they will ask you what is the domain of the product of f times g of x. So always when you create new function, you saying, okay, domain of the product is domain of function f and domain of function g, since both domains are all real numbers, so it's still going to be from negative infinity to positive infinity. And the last part, which is D, I'm assuming that they ask you for f over g of x, which is the quotient. So you want to rewrite that as function f divided by function g. So we're going to copy the equation of function f, which is 4x plus 5, copy equation of function g, which is 8x minus 1. And here, so that's your answer. Here, only when you have a quotient, the domain of the quotient f over g of x is the domain of f of x and g of x. And also, when you create that quotient, you always checking what you guys have inside of the parentheses in your denominator of the function, which is 8x minus 1. So you have to give the condition that function g of x cannot be equal 0. And g of x can be equal 0. So this is what that means. Domain of function f of x, it's all real, from negative infinity to infinity. Domain of function g, it's also all real, from negative infinity to infinity. Now, this is important because you have a quotient. We know that we can never ever divide by function by 0. That's why I gave that condition that g of x, the equation of function g of x, can't be equal 0. So here, you will need to solve that 8x minus 1 can't be equal 0, which means 8x can be equal 1. Divide each by 8, x can be equal 1 over 8. So we need to add this extra condition only for quotient, because when x is equal 1 over 8, the bottom part of that quotient will be 0, which can't happen. We won't be able to evaluate. So the final answer for domain of f over g of x, again, I'm just going to write the sentence first, is all real numbers except x equal 1 over 8. Okay, so we all need to do that extra work for quotient and what that means on the number line. So we know that x cannot be equal 1 over 8. So this is your domain. All real numbers except positive, I'm sorry, except 1 over 8, which if you want to write the intervals, you will represent that as an interval from negative infinity to 1 over 8 union 1 over 8 to positive infinity. Okay, so you have to check how my MATLAB wants you to leave that solution. So hopefully this video will help you to understand the problem from your homework 3.1 number 67. Okay.